Get your earballs ready. Welcome to the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Take time to sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Here are your hosts, Greg and Tim.
Welcome back to the Greg and Tim Show. I am Tim. This is my co-host, Greg. And
That's me.
We just finished interviewing a guy by the name of Drew Dudley. He wrote the book Day One.
This is Day One.
We're going to talk about this a little bit more.
It's fun. He got into some stuff that we didn't know we were going to get into. We talked about some favorite TV shows. We talked about some life experiences. And I think we got a little emotional at one point.
Yeah, we talked about some serious issues.
Yeah.
We talked about his life. We talked about some funny things. And he made a crazy prediction about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you're going to have to stay tuned.
You're going to have to stick around
to see what that is.
So part one here, we're going to talk a lot about random stuff, actually. I think part one is very random. Yeah. And then part two, we get more into the book and other things that we do. And then, of course, we do the this or that in part two as well. So this is part one coming up. And yeah, don't forget to click the subscribe button and share button, and everything's chaptered below. So if you want, you can skip to certain parts of the show if you'd like.
And
don't skip though.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to really enjoy this interview.
You're gonna love it,
and share it with everybody else, because I think everyone could benefit from the things that he has to say.
Yeah,
grab your phone. It's podcast time. It's the Greg and Tim Show. It's the Greg and Tim Show.
Today in this episode, we are honored to have the distinguished Drew Dudley in our virtual studio. He's an acclaimed leadership speaker, creator of the Lollipop Moment, and we'll get into that Lollipop Moment a little bit later. He had a TED Talk, which was amazing, which kind of catapulted this book here. This is Day One. Drew's insights have inspired countless individuals, including myself, because I've taken these to heart, on their leadership journeys.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that with the free throws early on a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah.
But in this episode, rejection therapy. In this episode, we're going to delve into the profound wisdom Drew shares in his book, exploring the transformative concepts of every day as Day One.
Yep.
Join us for a captivating conversation with a thought leader who challenges conventional wisdom and empowers us all to embrace leadership from the very beginning.
Yeah, so let's get ready for a dose of inspiration, actionable insights, as we discuss leadership, the life and the inspirational speaker, and the powerful idea that today is
Day One.
Day One. So how have you been doing?
I've been doing pretty well, actually, my friend. It's been a busy day today. I've done 2 different presentations today, and I think it's why I just don't want to bother taking my
dress clothes,
taking my tie off, man. It's just been doing it nonstop. So I'll tell you though, this studio looks better the darker it gets outside. So I'm like, looking, this is the first time I've ever done this late in the day, and I'm like, I should do all of these like this. It looks way slicker.
It looks very good.
It's magic hour though, right? So everybody looks good.
It's magic hour in here all the time because it's
I like it.
Dark except for the lights that are right in front of us. So I don't know. One time we did a test interview with my brother, and I'm like, hey, can you turn up your lights a little bit? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he's trying to figure out how to turn on his lights. Meanwhile, we forgot to turn on all of our lights. So we did the whole recording, and it looks like normal with your eyeballs, right? But we didn't have our bright lights on. So when we looked at the interview, we couldn't actually use it because none of the bright lights were on. So, and he didn't even tell us. He's like, well, I couldn't see you guys, but I thought that was on purpose.
Yeah.
Like it's just.
Yeah. In fairness, he was drunk.
He might have been.
Do you know there's something called Drunk Shakespeare?
No.
A bunch of cities in the States.
Tell me about it.
I think it's a cast of about 5 people. And the idea is they're going to perform a Shakespearean play, but one of the actors has to down 4 shots of Jack Daniels before the show starts.
Yeah.
And you can pay $500 and sit on a throne with your partner and be on the stage and like pass judgments on people, as well as
a throne of judgment.
Yeah. So I really want to see this, because nothing but respect to a guy who knows he's getting bombed and he's going to go on stage and do Shakespeare. So I think this would be bad. You get just like a bottle of Moet if you sit up on the stage. So yeah. I think it's a hell of a date night.
Whereabouts is this?
This is in both Chicago, DC, and I think they're in one other, probably New York too, right?
Chicago.
But I was looking at it. I'm in Chicago next weekend. was looking for something to do, and I'm like drunk Shakespeare.
I would go see that. Have you heard of those marathons that like every mile or whatever they take a sip of alcohol, like but it's like a regular marathon?
Yeah, so that doesn't seem like much, but you're running a marathon and you're doing a sip or 2 ounces of booze every way, man. Like, you're a mess.
What's a marathon? 22 miles?
26.2 miles. Yeah.
So you're drinking 52 ounces of alcohol.
Is it a beer or is it booze, man? Because if that's booze, that's insanity.
Yeah. When I did the Manitoba Marathon last year, there was a booze stop, but it was only one. I was like, "Is that real booze?"
Just the one.
He's like, "Is that real?" And I had never seen it. It's like, "That real booze?" Like, I'm not gonna do that, but it's kind of funny.
I think it'd be better if all those people who hand out the water cups on the way, like some of them are randomly just filled with vodka, but you don't tell anyone, and you just watch as people shoot it back. And I saw a post recently on somewhere on the net where the woman posted, "Hey, whoever put the frozen vodka in the water bottle in the fridge, you're the one responsible for Julie getting drunk at her soccer game." And then someone responded, "Look, man, if Julie got drunk, either she's never drank water before, or she's been partying pretty hard." So, like, you don't accidentally get hammered off of vodka thinking that it's water.
I was like, "What is this?" It's like when those people that give birth and they don't know they're pregnant, and all of a sudden they give birth to a kid and they never knew they were pregnant in the first place. That
baffles me.
Yeah, and it's speaking of what drinking alcohol and you're thinking it's something else. Like, we would do communion, and their old school church communion is real wine. But I grew up in the Mennonite culture where it was just grape juice. And the first time I went to an Orthodox church, and it's like I literally had to spit it out. It's like, it was so embarrassing. That's not grape juice at all.
Hey, you got coffee right now too. That's perfect. We all got our coffee.
Actually, this is just water, but I like to make it look like I'm all sophisticated.
Yeah.
I also don't have my Greg and Tim show mug.
Not yet.
Greg, get on the mug. What are you doing?
He has to be in studio.
You just said
he was supposed to be in this mug, but it turns out he didn't show up.
No.
That's okay. Tim's mug's full of rye, so...
Hey, man, hell, the Raptors traded me today.
Yeah.
I just found that out, that I've been dealt by the Raptors today to go along with everybody else. So,
well, you got a first-round draft pick, so you can't be too salty.
I think I'm worth at least a first round. I think because they go by weight, overall weight in the. So they're like, well, this dude's 260, so I think we're going to need a first rounder back for that. Just in terms of the sheer volume you're getting in the deal.
The big man up the middle, right? Oh, well, should we get into it?
5'8" inches of big man.
What? We should get it. This is perfect stuff.
This is all we wanted.
We don't need to get into anything. What are you talking about? I'm having a good time.
We haven't started yet?
No, this is all in. This better be all in.
We'll leave it in, I guess.
Okay, good.
You told me that once we started recording, I had to be funny. So.
I said it had to be on the record.
The problem with all these questions, everyone's so serious about the questions, and they stopped having a good time. And the good stuff is when you're not so stuffy and you're talking about drunk marathons.
So I'm going to tell you,
I have listened to your podcast, so I am well aware that being super serious is not really the way we go and do things here.
That's awesome. That's the best thing anyone could say about us.
I might actually clip that and put that in as a reference. But
man, if you don't enjoy you and Tim talking to each other about your lives, you are not a fan of the podcast.
Yeah.
Right? So,
well, his wife is one of those people, but yeah,
she listens.
I like any podcast that starts because two guys are on a road trip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because how many have started that way when you really break it down? Have been like, we should do a podcast. It's the 21st century version of we should buy a bar. That's what starting a podcast is. It's guys' 21st century version of, hey, we should buy a bar.
Well, Greg, that was his whole pitch. Hey, Tim, I have a great idea. We should start a podcast. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure.
He didn't think that I was actually serious.
No, I did. It's like, whatever you want. Sure. You want to go murder someone and stuff their body in a trunk? Start a podcast? Nah, I'm good either way.
Tim's big into the mob. I don't know if you know this.
I was just like, okay, this went a direction I did not anticipate. Now I'm like, am I liable or something?
What's that one with what's his name where he says I paint houses?
Oh, it's The Irishman.
The Irishman. Have you seen The Irishman?
I haven't seen The Irishman yet, though. It's one of those things I've been meaning to watch, but instead just watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine again.
I'm on that right now, too. We're on season 5. God.
magnificent.
Yeah,
I've seen it like 9 times. It's ridiculous. I just had it on permanently during the pandemic.
Yeah,
it was the only thing that made me feel better.
Yeah, it's such a good show.
Well, no, I can't make that joke. It's not 21st century anymore. I have all these things I want to say, but
you're not allowed.
Canceled.
Yeah, we were canceled for a week there 2 weeks ago because we had a guy on talking about the moon landing.
Or the lack of
yes, what you're saying now. So Greg titled everything, "Was the moon landing faked?" And then YouTube is like, "I don't think you can say that. No one's going to listen to you anymore."
Well, I mean, he walked right out of the studio and off the edge of the world, so tough break for that guy. The sea monsters got him. Oh dear.
Yeah, so that one got us not canceled, but we've seen a little bit of a decline.
Why would you be canceled for that? I mean, it's not you're supposed to bring on interesting guests, and people who think that the moon landing was fake are inherently interesting. Or Congress people.
Yeah, I think you've forgotten we live in Canada and we have a liberal government, but
we're not.
And everyone's super thrilled about that too. I've seen all of the flags because nothing says family values in a giant flag with the F word on it.
That's correct.
Thank you, my conservative friends.
Have you been to Florida?
Oh God! Have you been to upstate New York?
Oh, really? Is upstate New York Republican?
Upstate New York, man. You wouldn't think it. In central Pennsylvania, like apparently it's still 2020, and they are not happy about how things worked out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it really breaks my heart, man.
Hey,
I've had a long and interesting day. So if I seem like a very dry humor today, anyone listening, I may sound a little bit like an asshole.
So
I don't mean to.
So you match my humor. I love dry humor just like you. So I'll follow you the entire way. He's got some serious questions and he can get
serious. Not serious questions. We
some of them are serious.
We got some good questions because I also want to talk about the book a little bit, and people are going to watch this and go, "Hey, that's the guy that spoke at my conference." And he's hanging out with those two guys, so he must be a real person. So we kind of want to have a real person conversation with you, but also talk about your book. Is that cool?
Okay. Well, let's hope that's what they say. He's talking to these two guys, so he must be a real person, as opposed to I need to return this book. I love the podcast, though, guys. I'm so thrilled to be here. This is really cool. So
that's awesome. I appreciate that. That's awesome. So I got the physical copy, as I told you the other day. I've been listening to the audio copy because I'm a very slow reader. So the physical copy is more so that I can make notes now. Because I have notes on my phone, but I like to be able to look at them visually, and when I was talking and stuff like that. So that's why I got the physical copy. And Tim actually just binge listened to the episode or to the book.
The book, yeah.
What last 2 weeks ago or something
Monday.
like that? Yeah. So
this Monday.
I got to tell you, I apologize for what I did to the French language at different places in there. And I also said Albert Camus. It's Albert Camus. And I still, to this day, melt with embarrassment with the fact that hey, man, you could try reading something for 12 straight hours. It'll mess with you. I had no idea. They're like, you should take a break. Oh no, how hard can reading be?
6 hours and 24 minutes of reading that might take a little bit out of you. And it's funny because I mentioned to Greg the story you told about Kevin Costner in the movie Bull Durham. And he's like, Bull what? I was like, seriously, you have not seen Bull Durham? He's like, no, I've never seen it.
I haven't.
You haven't seen Bull Durham? I've seen it 53 times. You want me to do it for you right now?
Yes,
exactly. I believe in the Church of Baseball. I've tried all the major religions and most of the minor ones. See, I can do the movie for you if you want me to. And I apologize to anyone offended by that terrible, terrible Carolina accent right there.
I have to see it. It's on my list to watch this week now because, I didn't start watching baseball until I was probably 9 or 10 years old. So by that time, those movies had already come out. My first real baseball movies would have been like Sandlot, Field of Dreams. Those movies were, and I watched them over and over and over again, Peppercorn from Sandlot. That was the pinnacle of my childhood right there.
You've never seen The Sandlot?
You've never seen The Sandlot?
I've never seen The Sandlot. Tell you what, how about we switch up here?
Yes.
You watch Bull Durham, I'll watch The Sandlot. We'll come back on a future episode and offer our reviews.
Yes.
That seems fair.
Because I think Greg Zahn actually picked The Sandlot over Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
When we did the this or that.
Greg Zahn is wrong about so many things.
Bull Durham is ranked higher in most lists of best baseball movies than both of those movies. Anyway, I digress.
Bull Durham's usually in the top.
Any list that doesn't rank Bull Durham higher than The Sandlot is a list that I have no time for.
Exactly.
It's the best baseball movie ever made, and I don't think it's close.
Agreed.
Have you been to Field of Dreams?
I have been to the Field of Dreams. I have played catch on the Field of Dreams.
Nice.
And I'll tell you something. You should go because it's 2.5 hours from everything. Yeah. And it's just like the movie. Yeah. I don't know if it still is because they put up those stands for that game, which is awesome. Yeah. But when I got there, it was just like the movie. And you know how a lot of tourist places you get there and those wonderful empty photos of you standing there, it's actually like 400 people in line. There was not a soul there. We arrived and we had the whole thing to ourselves for an hour. We got to run the bases, play some catch. It was amazing, but it is 2.5 hours from like anywhere. Yeah. I've never been to a place that is always 2 hours from everywhere else.
They opened up a baseballism there. I'm a big like merch guy. Like I like to buy merch in different places, and we talked about my hat obsession and stuff like that. But they opened up a baseballism there, and you know, you can play catch there. You can get some food. I think you can get a hot dog or something like that at the stand there, and then they've got this store. But did you know that you can actually sleep there?
I did not know that.
You can rent the house, and then in the evening you get it to yourself, and you can sleep there.
Really?
Yep.
Back when I used to drink, I could sleep anywhere though. So like it was their problem keeping me out of there. So
just hanging out on the. Wait, that leads me to my first question.
Hey, are we on? Like, have we started? I'm not actually.
This is perfect so far. This is as long as you're not wanting anything cut out, we're not cutting any of this stuff.
I don't want Greg Zahn hunting my ass down.
Oh man, I do miss his roasts and everything like that. So, but I was a fan. So I'm going to ask you my first formal question, and then we'll just keep on chatting again after that. Who's Drew Dudley?
Who is Drew Dudley? Drew Dudley is a work in progress. And basically, if you want to talk about who I am in terms of what keeps me busy every day, I am an author and a speaker. And what I try to do is take a perspective on leadership that I developed at the University of Toronto and spread it as far and wide as I possibly can. It was developed based on, I was really inspired by some students who weren't giving themselves the credit they deserved as terms of leaders in the world. And I turned into somebody who, I guess if you want to put it down simply, Drew Dudley is a storyteller. And what I've tried to do is, because the story is the basic unit of human understanding, what I try to do is take ideas that I believe are important and wrap them in Velcro so they stick. Because I don't want to ever claim that any of the stuff that I say is completely original and no one's ever thought or no one's ever said it before. But I think our job as speakers and people who are trying to convey ideas, people who traffic in ideas, it's our job to take things that other people know already, wrap them in Velcro so it sticks. And ultimately, that's basically what I try to do, is take good ideas, wrap them up in Velcro so you remember them, and share them with other people. So I'm my buddy Blake used the term professional sentimentalist, and I kind of liked it, to be completely honest.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's our best who is answer so far. Not to knock the other guys, but I don't think everybody else was really. You do speak professionally, and you host yourself in a conference, and you do all these. Like the first time I ever saw you was in Toronto. I think it was the Heritage Castle or whatever it's called there, and you spoke in front of all of us, and I'm like, man, I had never heard of this guy, but everything he's saying I want to learn more about, right? I think that's the Velcro part.
Yeah, I hope so. And honestly, it sucks to be famous, and so I'm glad I'm not. It really does. You know, I've been lucky enough to be at events and speak with people who are famous, and just the way that they're always pulled in 1,000 different directions. And I think even worse is they can never really be themselves either, right? Like there are a few famous people who really have made a career out of just being unapologetically themselves. Like Gary Vaynerchuk's an excellent example.
Yeah.
You know, lots of people admire Gary Vaynerchuk for a lot of reasons. For me, it's because he seems to be relentlessly Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
And whether you agree with him or not, or you love all his ideas or not, he doesn't get up there and clean it up. And I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Now someone out there might be like, Gary Vaynerchuk was just found guilty of this. I just don't know.
Yep.
But so to my best knowledge right now, well, it's interesting too, right? Because, you know, you talk about people you admire, you talk about people as references, and because I don't really listen to the news anymore, sometimes people are like, you know what just happened with them, eh? And I'm just like, something that's going to make me wish I had not mentioned them as an example, and and it kind of unfolds like that. But it sucks to be famous. I noticed that from famous people.
My favorite,
and so
Gary,
it's nice to be the center of attention but not be famous.
Yeah. My favorite Gary V comment or his story that he told was he went to do like one of those like conferences and speak in front of people, and they wouldn't let him in the room because he was wearing sneakers and jeans. But
Isn't everybody rich and famous wear sneakers and jeans now?
Well, this would have been like probably 6 or 7 years ago, like prior to, you know, casual Fridays being every day, right? So
if Mr. Beast can wear it, I think the rest of us can wear it too, right? So,
do you know who Mr. Beast is, Tim?
No.
No.
I'll tell you. Here's the thing, Tim. Don't feel bad, because there was a thing that was just on the internet, because I don't watch the news, but I scroll the internet because that's healthy. And it was like, if you can't name 8 of these 10 people, you're old. And I got 1, and it was Mr. Beast, and I wasn't sure. So like, and I'll tell you, I'm feeling a little dizzy today. I've been walking into walls all day because this is my first day wearing these glasses, and they're bifocals, which means I have officially entered a different stage in my life. So for everybody out there, the day that you put bifocals on for the first time is a moment where you have to say, this is a line of demarcation in my life. And I've just been bumping into stuff the whole day, but I can read my phone, which is great. But you guys are talking to me on my first day of, I'm going to guess that we're now talking upper middle age, right? I'm not sure how you break it down. We could talk about like how middle age breaks down, but I think I'm in the upper crust of it now. Like just before lower senior citizen is upper middle age.
I think you might be younger than both of us, though.
I don't know. And I'm 47.
Well, you're the same age as Tim.
I turned 48 in 12 days.
You're 48, man. You're looking good.
No, in 12 days I turned. I'm not 48 yet.
Okay. That came out wrong. You're looking good, man. Like,
you sexy.
I didn't mean it to be that creepy. I'm so sorry.
So I have a question here, but before I get to it, there's a book in front of us. We referenced it, but the people that are listening right now don't really know anything about Day One. I enjoyed Day One. I read it, or I had the audiobook read to me. You read to me for 6 hours and 24 minutes on Monday. But for the people out there, could you tell us what this book is about and why somebody should read it?
Yeah, I mean, the book is about a type of leadership that I think to which we all can and should aspire. When I talk about leadership, I talk about powerful moments of interpersonal interaction, moments of impact, moments of courage, empowerment, forgiveness, compassion, because I believe that those are powerful things that everyone can do. The challenge is that this thing that's the most powerful thing any of us can do, which is to have an impact on other people, we've been taught to stick them all in a basket, compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, and call them the little things. And I don't think they're little. I think they're the most powerful things that we do. But the problem, and the thing I think is great, is it's the only power on earth that's accessible to everyone on earth. Every other form of power on earth has these systemic barriers between that power and most of the people on the planet, but not the ability to create these powerful moments of interpersonal impact. And so what I did is I wanted to write a practical guide to how to do that on a consistent basis. And that's what it is. This is Day One, a practical guide to leadership that matters. And that was a big thing for me. Why should people read it? I think the number one reason that people should read it is that all of us have been educated out of our leadership. We've been taught it's about money and power and influence. And as a result, the vast majority of us who don't have those things have come to believe that leadership isn't actually a part of who we are. And the book lays out why that isn't the case. And most importantly, it provides a step-by-step process on how to change our behavior. Because it's one thing to tell great stories. And I love telling stories, right? That's how people understand things. It's how we've conveyed information since the beginning of humanity. But I think that one of the key pieces is if you're speaking, if you're writing a book, you have to give people something they can do differently and a bit of a step-by-step process. So that's what the book was intended to do. And you say it was 6 hours and 23 minutes to read. It was actually about 27 hours to read it. And it was the 6 hours and 23 minutes that actually was any good that we put into the damn thing. And look, that book took 11 years to get out of my head. And so, you know, someone said it takes a while to read it. I'm like, you should try writing the damn thing. See how long that takes. Although the book took that many years to get done, but I actually wrote it in 18 days,
right?
Which I don't know why I volunteered that information, because it just seems like I wrote it in 18 days when I got my heart broken, and on a gray October, November in 2000, and God, I don't even remember what year it was, 2015 maybe. I actually sat down. I hadn't left the apartment in like 4 days, and I just sat down and wrote it in 2 weeks, and then spent a year and a half editing it. But it was actually, you know, intended to be done for a long time. And you know how everyone's like, oh, I'm going to write that book. I've got it all in my head.
Yeah.
Finally, it took like someone really kind of breaking me in half to sit down and actually pour it out. And, you know, I'm pretty grateful for that, to be honest.
Yeah, you could write a Taylor Swift song, right? That's how she writes all of her songs after a breakup, right? You wrote a book.
Yeah, I think, see, of our vintage, though, it's more Alanis Morissette.
Yeah.
Because I see Taylor and I see a blonde Alanis, because that was when I was that age. And Jagged Little Pill, I played it. I was one of my former students was in a car with me. We were driving along, and I was playing Jagged Little Pill, and her comment was, "This is like Taylor Swift if she was really pissed off." And I'm like, Taylor Swift doesn't exist without this album. Katy Perry doesn't exist. Miley Cyrus doesn't exist without this album. Sorry, this show really does kind of go all over the place. You talked about the best baseball movies, the best I'm Pissed at You albums. Again, it's Jagged Little Pill, end of story.
Did you know, Tim, this is something you didn't know about Tim, he doesn't like Alanis Morissette.
I can't stand Alanis Morissette.
You are not alone in that, and I have been defending my girl Alanis for, I guess, since I was in grade 10, man. So I'm used to the haters.
I admit the album's great. I just can't stand her tone of her voice. It sounds whiny, but that's just me.
I'm assuming if you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you've seen How I Met Your Mother, right?
Oh, yes. Except you can't watch How I Met Your Mother now. It's like Cheers. You're just like, oh, this is just sexual harassment for 30 minutes.
That's my favorite. Cheers is my favorite show.
How I Met Your Mother.
Cheers is my favorite show.
Barney Stinson.
Cheers is amazing, but you watching it with today's understanding of some of the problematic pieces in there. Yeah. Like I love Boston Legal, right? Yeah. But you can't watch that show now without being like, there's some stuff wrong with this show.
Yeah.
Try watching old Johnny Carson, late night shows.
Oh,
or even what's his name, Craig Ferguson. I watched Craig Ferguson's
Macdonald
Clicks.
Was awful.
Yeah.
I love Norm Macdonald.
I love him too.
Fearless, but like some of his jokes about women did not age well. You know what I mean? But
okay, let's go back.
Well, I didn't get to ask my How I Met Your Mother question. The Robin Sparkles. Did you know that it was? Did you know she was kind of like based off of Alanis?
I did. As soon as I saw Robin Sparkles, especially when she went dark.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I was like, there it is.
So anyway,
I love it.
Sorry, Tim. I had to talk about How I Met Your Mother. I like the show, and yeah, Barney probably goes a little bit over with the playbook. They still sell it at Chapters.
I know.
So I have two.
I admit I bought it
and read it. You just buy it or read it?
I read it.
It's one of those coffee table books. It's a conversation starter.
Code. I read it. Remember how at the beginning I said, "Who is Drew Dudley?" and I said he's a work in progress. That's some of the progress.
That's fantastic. You gotta be.
We can be therapy. You can talk to us. Yeah. Well, sit down on the couch. If you're not comfortable in the chair, just sit on the couch. Put the camera there. We'll talk. So
I like if everyone who talked to me had my book staring at me, though. It just makes me feel like a really important person.
I'm going to go back to the book.
Turned it around.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the book for a second. I have two questions. Number one, you explained very well why someone should read the book and what the book's about. How does the title Day One fit into that description?
Yeah, the idea is a lot of the Day One concept came from various places in my own experience. Some of it was the things that I had worked on in leadership. Some of it had been some of the people that I met along the way. early on in the book, I tell the story of a guy that I met in the desert named Mustafa.
Yeah, the guy from Lion King.
He ran the tour cup. That's Mufasa. I learned that the hard way when I met him, and I said, "Oh, like the Lion King." And he's like, "That's Mufasa," but he forgave me, and he told me that every day that he went to work, he looked at it as if it was his first day, because he told me as we're driving towards a cliff, he's like, "Oh, it's my first day." Yeah. And I thought, great, I've got the new guy on cliff jumping. And he basically said, it's been my first day for 17 years. And so this idea that the first day and how you approach it and how it's different than other days really hit me. And then when I coupled that experience, and that was in 2010 when he gave me this idea of every day is day one, is I then quit drinking. I am an alcoholic. And when I quit drinking, one of the things you learn in recovery is that if you don't want to have a drink for the rest of your life, you have to make the incredibly hard decision not to have a drink today. And let's face it, that decision, quote unquote, can be the hardest thing that you ever have to do. Yeah. But you treat every day of the rest of your life as if it's your first day of recovery, because that means you don't rest on the laurels of what you've accomplished in the past, but you also don't get overwhelmed by how many days there are still to go in the future. Yep. So you only focus on the non-negotiables of that day. And for me, to quote Aaron Sorkin, my number one priority between getting out of bed in the morning and getting back into it is to not have a drink. That's the non-negotiable. The idea is with our leadership, it's the same thing. There are non-negotiable behaviors that have to happen every day, and you have to stay committed to them. So the idea is this is day one, is the first day of a difficult voyage. And it's, there is no one day in your life that doesn't start with a day one, right? Whether it's heading to physical health, mental health, romantic life, your job, whatever it is, and your leadership, there isn't a single one day to which you want to get in any of those categories that doesn't start with a day one. And day one's the day you say, these are the non-negotiables. This is what's going to happen every day. And that came from 12-step programs, that idea that this is day one. Yep. Every day is day one. Tomorrow's day one. So is the day after. That means you stay committed. And if you string enough day ones together, it's amazing how different the 10,000th day one is than the first one, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Myself, I stopped drinking at the end of 2020. So I 21, 22, 23. So I'm 3 years and almost 2 months in to not drinking. And I didn't do it because I was drinking too much. I did it because I actually want to try not drinking. And
yeah, I know lots of people, and then they're just like, oh, why did I ever do it?
Yeah. So it became something like, I'm like, and I save money. I save a ton of money. And then I go on trips with Tim.
Yeah. And I think that the only time I really miss it, guys, is like, I went to my first swim up bar when I was down on vacation recently. And honestly, I just sat there thinking I would kill to be able to have a drink right now. Yeah. It's the only time really in the last, 5-6 years that I've really missed it. Yeah. So yeah, but life is so much better.
Yeah. You wake up a lot better. You feel a lot better. I go out with friends on like Christmas parties and stuff. And the next day they're like, just wrecked, and I'm just a normal everyday, right? So it's
a social hangover for me, man. Yeah, like it was a social hangover. You woke up and the first thing you thought is, who's pissed at me? Yeah. and that really upset me.
Yeah, and we the social hangover part of it is this is a whole different part of the social hangover. We talked myself and yourself a long time ago during COVID. You spoke to one of our staff, or some of our staff, and we talked about introverts and extroverts. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And me and Tim had a conversation about introverts and extroverts, and you had a great definition of what an extrovert is.
Oh yeah, someone explained it to me, because I came out as mildly extroverted on one of those MBTI tests. Yeah, and I thought mildly extroverted, but that doesn't jive with my concept of myself. And then the person explained that introversion and extroversion isn't about how outgoing you are. It's about how you gain and lose energy. Yeah. And that extroverts gain energy from interactions while introverts lose it. So even though while I'm interacting with people, I'm very outgoing and extroverted, the whole time I'm losing steam. Yeah. And other extroverts, it would be like they're gaining steam when they're out at a party. I'm losing it. And so the difference between introversion and extroversion isn't about how outgoing you are. It's how whether your interactions give you energy or take energy from you. Because when I'm done, I got to go watch The West Wing for 4 episodes. After I go, like after I do this, it's back to Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Parks and Rec.
This is exhausting.
So yeah, it is. It really is.
Yeah.
So it's funny because we had this discussion about extroverts versus introverts, and we are, I think, and I've come to this conclusion, we're total opposites.
Yeah.
Greg is an introvert by definition in that he loses energy as he interacts with people, but he's learned tendencies to be an introvert as far as how he interacts with people, et cetera, et cetera.
I've learned to be an extrovert.
He's learned extrovert tendencies. And I'm the opposite. I think I gain energy talking to people, but I've learned introverted tendencies. So I tend to introvert myself. So it's interesting that we're totally the opposite in what we've learned our behaviors are.
I think the pandemic changed a lot of things, at least for me too. Like I'm much quieter now than I used to be. Like you do stuff like this and I love it. I just love it, but I will be exhausted afterwards.
Yeah.
But I'm different now than I was before the pandemic. And it's hard to put exactly how, but I'm definitely a little bit different. And I've taken to heart a lot more. I do this thing in the book called Edge of the Bed Advice, where I ask people for if they were sitting on the edge of their bed the last night before they left home, or they're sitting on the edge of their kid's bed the night before their kid left home, what advice would they give them? And somebody told me in a workshop that his edge of the bed advice would be, in your life, you will be presented with opportunity after opportunity to shut the hell up. Seize every one of them. And I just loved it. And I have tried very hard to better embody that. Not when you're on a podcast, obviously, because that's not going to make your guys' lives any easier. But you will be presented with opportunity after opportunity to shut the hell up. Seize every single one of them you can, and your life will be better.
That's what my wife says.
True. She says, shut the...
She's like, sometimes you should just stop talking.
I say that.
Yeah, you say that too. Yeah. Most people in my life tell me that. You should probably just relax and stop talking.
Yeah, my mouth gets me in a little bit of trouble. It always has, but it also gets me paid, right?
Yeah.
People tell me to stop talking. I'm like, yeah, I can't. I started talking once and someone handed me a check. Are you going to stop? You want me to stop talking? Stop paying me.
Yeah.
Right now, someone out there is like, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would love to get paid to stop talking. I just, nobody cares enough, I guess.
Okay, so I had a question for you, and it's maybe not so much a question as a statement. I really liked in the book when you talked about leadership as a point of how somebody views every situation in their life versus a position of leadership. And I think that in society, we compare ourselves to someone else who has those positions, whether it's a job, whether it's socially, and doesn't really look to their circle of who they're involved with. Every opportunity that you have to interact with someone is a chance to be a leader, whether it's as an example, whether it's with a mother with their children, whether it's A, B, or C. And a story that I've thought of for us, and we go to church and there's a story in the Bible about the talents where someone's given 1 talent, 5 talents, 10 talents, and they're all given different types or amounts of equity or talents, and they're asked to do whatever they can with it. And the person with 5 talents made 5 more talents. They invested it. The person with 10 talents doubled it and made 20, so on and so forth. And the person with 1 talent just dug a hole in the ground and just said, here's your talent when whoever gave it to them came back. So I think that's a valuable thing to know, in that everyone's given different responsibilities, but how you behave or how you react to those responsibilities really is indicative of how you live your life. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things, my friend, is that I've thought about leadership in a bunch of different ways. I thought about it as atomic leadership, where we're all atoms flying around. And when you think of it that way, we're all moving around as let's say we're atoms, right? And then you can hit another one and you send it off in a completely different direction. But also the thing about molecules and atoms is that we could bond together. Like the 3 of us might be out there in the world, each of us having our own impact on other people, but we could also bond together and create an entirely different substance. Like 2 H's and an O make water. Water then can interact with all kinds of other substances and solubles and create entirely new things. And so I've thought about leadership like that, is that if we all look at ourselves as an individual atom moving around in the universe, every time we interact with somebody, we can send them in a different direction. We can bond with them. Once we're bonded with them, we're something totally different. And then we can impact other people as well. I don't know enough about physics, though, to really sort of play the whole thing out, if that makes any sense. But I also have thought about leadership, as you were saying. What if we stopped thinking of leaders as existing? Because I think right now we treat leadership as if it's something you earn. And once you're there, you keep it. But what if we said that you're only a leader when you're demonstrating leadership? Any other time when you're not actively demonstrating leadership, you're no longer a leader, which means your goal wouldn't be to be a leader. Your goal would be to be a leader as often as possible. And so what percentage of your life you're engaging in leadership is actually your measure of leadership, as opposed to saying, oh, I've done a certain amount in the world, now I'm officially a leader. I'm a CEO, so I'm a leader.
Yep.
It would be interesting because the goal wouldn't be to say you're a leader. It would be to say I'm often a leader. So for instance, when you were asleep, you would not be a leader because you wouldn't be actively engaging in leadership. So it's weird. Like what I think of leadership, someone told me early on in my study of it that there are more definitions of leadership than there are books on leadership. And so that every book's got 3 different definitions of it. So yes, I see leadership as existing in individual behavior. How we go about explaining that, hey, everybody's got their own analogy, right? But really the core heart of the book and my work is that you have every right to call yourself a leader. Because if you change the direction someone is going over the course of a day, it's dramatic. Someone told me, and you probably heard this before, if a ship leaves from New York to fly, if a ship flies from New York to London, if it sets sail to go to London from New York City, and about 100 miles off of New York, it veers 1.5 degrees to the left, it will end up hundreds of miles away from London.
Yep.
Because it moved a 1.5 degrees to the left. If we think of that, man, every time we move somebody's life 1.5 degrees to the left, something cool's happening. They're going to end up somewhere completely different. Yeah. Hopefully we didn't pitch them into somewhere terrible. And that's always something to realize too.
Hopefully we're getting them in the right direction and not steering them in the wrong direction, right?
Yeah, James Clear talks about the 1% every day, like if you are doing 1% better every single day. So it's kind of similar to what you're going to say. I had a question about, I'm going to push back a little bit about the whole leader. It seems like everyone's talking about being a leader. You're going to be a leader. I'm going to be a leader. Everyone wants to be a leader. So what I would ask is, are there some times where there needs to be followers? There needs to be people who are under the leader doing some of the legwork, where everyone can't be quote unquote a leader in their company, in their business, in their organizations. Do we need followers? And can you be a follower and a leader at the same time?
I think the best leaders are followers and leaders at the same time. 100%, man. I talk about everyone as a leader, but I mean, it's a particular type of leadership. Yep. And there's a huge overview of leadership, but everyone is capable of. And then there are subsections of leadership within that not everyone can or should do, without a doubt. And there are different roles that you have to play in different scenarios. For instance, there are all kinds of roles where I end up leading because of my personality, but there are some places where I should definitely step back. When I'm working on a scientific, if we ever got assigned a scientific project with someone, I need to step back.
Yeah.
Right. You know what's really interesting? You want to see different ways of leading? Go to escape rooms with people.
Yes.
I'm terrible at those.
It's so true.
I am a follower in escape rooms.
Yeah.
Right. Just the concept of them doesn't work for me. I know that once you go and do a bunch of them, you start to learn the tricks. But when I'm in there, how there's always codes to break and numbers to work with.
Yeah.
I'm a follower.
Yeah.
Big time. But when it comes to, if I go to a conference and I'm sitting at a table and you know how they give you assignments at the table together, I'm almost always the guy who ends up sort of coordinating what's going on there.
You have to present.
So I think that the ability to shift between follower and leader, I think that is actually an excellent attribute of really great leaders. So not everyone can or should be a CEO.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to be. I want to be straight up with that. When I say everyone should be a leader, I am not saying everyone should be president of the United States or could be.
No.
Well, Maybe that's a bad example because apparently anybody can be president of the United States. But whole other conversation.
On both sides. On both sides.
Hey, Rock Hanks 2024. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine? Yeah, I think Schwarzenegger would have been president if he could have ran for president.
True, but he couldn't, right? Because he wasn't born in America, just like Ted Cruz. Yeah, Ted Cruz burned.
Or Obama.
Or Obama. Look at the look he gave you there.
I love Republicans. They're the best.
Oh man. So I'm gonna kind of touch a little bit on the leadership thing because Tim's got to ask a couple questions, so it's my turn, I guess. Okay. We've heard the Lollipop Moment, and I'm going to link the Lollipop Moment in the video here at the bottom in the description, so people can watch that and kind of catch you where you kind of exploded, right? Like the Lollipop Moment was what really took you off, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so, without a doubt. I've been doing a lot of speaking around colleges and universities, but that particular talk on TED really sort of launched me into a different type of career.
Yeah. So when you acknowledge that a lot of leadership does go unnoticed, how can we as everyday people create a culture that appreciates and celebrates the subtle yet impactful leadership moments? And what can we do that will do your Lollipop Moment, essentially?
Yeah, I think, and this is not a snarky response. What I think the answer is do it. Like you said, how do we recognize that type of leadership? By recognizing it. Okay. Now, how do we go about doing it? Like, I just think, I wish I had a different way of putting it, but like, how do we do it? By doing it, by actually making it. But the difference is, instead of accidentally doing it, because the Lollipop Moment that I talk about in the TED Talk was an accident. Yeah. And the book is really about how to turn that type of behavior where you impact another person from an accident, a random act of kindness, to a conscious act of kindness. Yeah. Because I think we do a lot of celebrating random acts of kindness, and I think conscious acts of kindness are the way to go. And I think that one of the key things that I do is that I create these questions, and the book is about how to do this. But I take a question. So let's say I want to live impact every day. Step one is you say, you identify impact as something you want to live. Yep. Step two is you define it using the phrase a commitment to. So impact is a commitment to creating moments that cause people to feel like they're better off for having interacted with you. And then you create a question that you can't answer without living the value. Yep. So for impact, it was, what have I done today to recognize someone else's leadership? And if you go through the day, and it's all based on psychology that says once something is in your head that you have to do, your brain will not relax until it's done. Yep. And so if you stick a question into your brain that you need to get answered, because the brain hates unanswered questions, you will be driven to seek out an answer. And if the question is, what have I done today to recognize someone else's leadership? Well, if you answer that question, I let you guys know how much I love the podcast because it makes me laugh. Yeah. Right. That's me taking a moment to answer the question, how have I recognized someone else's leadership? Because when you bring laughter into this world, that is an act of leadership. Yeah. I really, truly do believe that. And so that, to me, if I can answer that question, I have lived the value. For courage, what have I tried today that might not work, but I tried it anyway? Yeah. So what I do is I go into every day with a series of questions, and I try to get half of them answered. Because look, man, I got 6 values I want to live every day, and there's no way I'm going to do it every day. Yeah. Like, it's just setting yourself up.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off on the courage one for a second here, because that goes to the rejection therapy, right? Yeah. Sorry, I want to cut you off on it because I want to ask you a question. I told you about this situation where I got to do a free throw because of the courage, right? Where I got to do something. What did I do today that I thought wouldn't work that did work, right? So I got to do that free throw, and I got some pushback on that one. I got some pushback from Tim.
No. I did not push back.
No, sorry. I got a question from Tim. Yes. Because he wanted to question my moral authority on the whole thing. So my question for you is, if we're doing rejection therapy and showing the courage of what did I try today that I thought wouldn't work, that, I tried anyway. When do you get to a point where that may be something that is, and how did I write it down? Breaking rules or breaking, you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah,
like I did that. Obviously that wasn't something that I was technically allowed to do.
Yeah, we snuck onto the court.
We didn't sneak on.
We got onto the court where you're supposed to pay money to experience what we experienced. The question is, have we stolen, and is that now not immoral?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love the idea of rejection therapy because I think it gets people trying things. It gets us over being afraid of doing things we shouldn't be afraid of, asking for things that we want. But I think, like everything else in the world, we have to use our common sense and determine whether or not, what did I try today that might not work, but I tried it anyway? Well, hell, you could do anything saying it might not work. You could light the Hollywood sign on fire just because you think it would be amazing to look at. So I 100, I never thought of it that way, though, is that encouraging people to engage in unethical or illegal behavior?
Yeah.
It doesn't, let's put it this way. It doesn't eliminate that possibility, but it was not created intending that, if that's what you mean. But I honestly had never thought about the fact that maybe people are like, oh, you know what? I think that liberating this car in the parking lot is something that might not work, but I'm going to try it anyway. You're right. You could totally do that.
Yeah.
That was not how it was intended, though.
But one of your...
The other thing, too, is that who are you ripping off? You say, did you steal it? Like, you're supposed to pay for that experience, but how much that experience is worth is completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
And it's a $1 billion corporation that sets that price. So I'm going to forgive you on that one.
Okay, good.
And the other thing is
how you look at ethics, right?
And no one else was going to pay for the experience when he jumped on the court. That's the other argument.
Yeah, like the experience essentially was, we tried to do it. Like, we tried to do the experience without having a ticket, essentially, right? Yeah. So it's not like if they said no, we weren't going to fight them and argue with them. We would turn around and go back, right? So they didn't say no. So I
guess part of it is was anyone hurt?
Yeah.
I think is a big one, right? I think, who is harmed by you trying to add something to your life? And I think that's a question that we should always ask. Is it, I'm going to try to do this to make my life cooler or more interesting or whatever, or more rewarding. Does anyone have to pay for that?
Yeah.
Because you didn't pay for something you should have paid for, but did anyone pay for that?
Yeah.
And the question is, unless someone got fired for letting you on, probably not.
We did end up in a photo, though, with a group of people that didn't know.
We have not gotten on. We've not figured out how to get that photo.
Isn't that like a How I Met Your Mother episode where they're like, don't you always have some rando in the photo?
Yes, that's exactly
I recently was at an event and they were like, I was there with a date and they were like, oh, Drew, get in. And all I could think of is like, what if we're not together, like down the road sometime? And you're like, who is that guy again? So I always hesitate when someone's like, no, it happens all the time at events, right?
Yeah.
Oh, let's all get a group photo. Okay, Drew, you come in. I'm like, I'm your guest speaker. No one's going to remember who the hell the guy in the middle was in the suit.
Yeah, and the courage thing has really helped me with the podcast here. So you are actually one of the catalysts for this podcast, because like when I told Tim I wanted to do it, it was a courage thing that I said, like, I can do this and I'm going to try doing this even though I've never done this before. And then reaching out to guests. Like yesterday we had a guest on that's going to come out on this week. So episode 23, the guest was one of Tim's idols from his childhood. And I reached out to him, and Tim's birthday is in a week and a half here. So I bought the guest's book and on a whim, and I contacted him. His name's Kurt Keelback. He used to be
I was going to say, is it Greg Zahn? Because I apologize if it was for being mean to Greg Zahn.
His name is Kurt Keelback, and he was the play-by-play announcer for the Winnipeg Jets back in the first time the Winnipeg Jets were around. And,
really?
Radio, yeah.
We would, as children, we would listen to the radio for hockey because it wasn't on TV back in the day. Like, you couldn't watch every game. You would listen to every game. And he was the voice of the Winnipeg Jets for 17 years. And then he moved to Phoenix. And if you ever watch that Ovechkin goal where he like pulls it behind his neck and you hear the voice saying, drags it through, that's Kirk Keelback. Like he has the call on that call. So I reached out to him again as a moment of courage and said, hey, any chance that you could come to my studio and record a podcast with us? It's for my buddy. It's his birthday coming up, and he's like a huge fan of yours. And he messaged me back like, what day works? And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, right?
Have you heard my Jerry Howarth story?
No.
Tell it, please.
Okay, and look, I apologize because the worst is when people do one-up stories. So I'm not trying to do that because I don't think this is any cooler. It just reminded me of this. So the same way you just described how like the voice of your childhood team is I learned about baseball because the Jays were on twice a week on television.
Yeah.
So I learned baseball from Jerry Howarth and Tom Cheek, the play-by-play and color commentary for the Jays for 30 some years until Tom passed away. And then Jerry kept on for 20 more years. But I realized that when you think about it, 162 games a year, I would listen to the radio every single night. Jerry Howarth spoke more words to me than anyone on the planet other than my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And even then it would be close because he would talk for 3 straight hours and I would listen every single night for 162 days a year. And so I found out he was retiring. They announced it very suddenly because he was ill. And I pulled over and cried because he was the link to my dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when I listened to Jerry Howarth, I thought about me in the canoe with my dad, me on the dock, driving to the cottage. It was always me and my dad. So he was the voice of baseball to me. I learned baseball from him. And when he retired very suddenly, I was really upset.
Yeah.
And so I wrote an article called What I Learned About Leadership from Jerry Howarth. I put it on LinkedIn, put it on social media. A couple days later, I get a call. And it's like, hey, Drew, Jerry Howarth. And it's so weird to hear, like, it because you just experienced it, right?
Yeah.
It's so weird to hear the voice talk about normal stuff. And he just said, it was passed on to me by my daughter who saw it. And I just wanted to say it's the nicest thing anyone's written about me since I retired. And I wanted to tell you how much I appreciated it. And we had a wonderful little chat. He hung up and I just kind of ran around the room like, oh my God, I just talked to Jerry. Get a call a couple weeks later. He says, my autobiography is coming out. Could I use it as the introduction to my autobiography?
Wow.
So the introduction to Jerry Howarth's autobiography is this article that I wrote. And when I gave it to my dad, he cried, which bugs me because when I gave him my book, he didn't. However, to talk about courage, what Jerry said, is there anything I could do for you? And I said, would you call my dad?
Yeah.
And just say hello. And he said, no. And I'm like, oh. He said, why don't you come to the game? It's going to be Vladdy's first game. This was in May of 2019, maybe.
Yeah.
Why don't you come to the game? I'll get you and your dad tickets and I'll come out and say hello. I'll surprise him. Wow. And so we get to the game. Dad's like, why are we here so early? Jerry comes out and didn't just say hi. 45 minutes of sitting and talking with my dad about Blue Jays, about Blue Jay history. It was the happiest I saw my dad in the last 3 years of his life. He was absolutely beaming. They argued Dave Steve versus Roy Halladay, which are two guys who could actually do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Until they put Dave Steve in MLB The Show, I don't know for sure. I was too young. But
we still have to play.
He did that for us. Isn't it amazing when someone cares enough to say yes to that?
Wow.
And the thing was, sometimes when you ask, what could I try that might not work, but try it in anyway? If you're afraid to do it for yourself, do it for somebody else.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's a little bit easier when you're like, hey, would you do this for my friend?
Right.
And so I don't know what's up with Jerry Howarth and the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't know why he's not on the Ring of Honor. I don't know why there hasn't been any kind of day to honor him. I'm wondering if there's, something happened when they broke up.
Yeah.
But I do know that I will hold a special place in my heart for that man for my entire life, not only because of what he brought me as a sportscaster, but because of how he treated my dad.
Yeah, and it's funny because I listened to his book prior to even hearing you speak, so I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the book again now. It was a huge honor. Yeah,
a huge honor to me.
That's fantastic. That would be amazing. Tim, maybe you can write the foreword to Kirk Keelback's next book.
Yeah, I'm game.
Kirk Keelback.
It was cool. It was just cool to think about what I learned from the guy.
Yeah,
like the fact that you should honor other people's accomplishments too. He was never a homer. Yeah. Like when another team pulled a perfect double play, Jerry told you that sometimes the best way to shine is to reflect the light of others, right? So Even Joe Siddle as his replacement or as his partner. When he heard Joe Siddle had lost his son, he suggested him. He suggested a guy who'd never done it before. He could have demanded any professional after 30 some years that he got a pro to sit next to him, and he picked a brand new guy that he had to carry for a couple years. Yeah. And I think Joe's amazing now. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. The Jays have had great broadcasters like Jerry Howarth, Tom Cheek, and as much as some people make fun of Buck Martinez being a homer, because he's probably the opposite of Jerry Howarth, he's very homer. I still love, like, I want to get that alarm clock that says get up, get up, get up ball, right? When it goes off. That would be...
Hey, Dan Schulman.
And Dan Schulman,
like, how lucky are we to have Dan Schulman, right? You know what I mean?
He's
with
a world-class broadcaster.
Beautiful voice.
Yeah, he is.
Man, you better be when you get born with that voice.
Yeah, that's very true. So, Tim, that was part one. We kind of went like a little scatterbrained at the beginning of this episode when we were talking to him. We were talking about a whole bunch of different things. And I think it was fun, though, because I think that's what our show's about.
You know, sometimes we get a little too serious about our topics that we're experts at. And you know what? Drew had a chance to let his hair down. We talked about a movie that we all enjoy that you haven't watched yet, and just some funny things about life. And isn't that all what we're all here for? Just kind of chatting about life.
Yeah, it was fantastic,
and I really enjoyed that. You know, he's a great guy. Looking forward to when he comes to town and chatting with him there too. But you know, part one, I really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to that and to part two coming up.
Yeah, part two is coming up next week. So if you want, don't forget to hit the likes button, the subscribe button, all that kind of stuff. Hit your notifications, whatever you want. Make sure you're following us on Instagram because we'll share some of the clips from the episode. And we've got part two coming up next week. So thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show today. What do you say at the end of every episode?
At the end of every episode?
Yeah, so far. What have you been saying recently?
I've been saying
it's a cereal.
It's a cereal. What's that? Shreddies?
Cheerio.
Oh, Cheerio.
See you next week.
I totally forgot what I said every time I'm doing.
Thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Sharing is caring.